Hello everyone and welcome to this video which is in our Human Game series. I'm Grandmaster Matthew Sadler and we are previewing in this video the upcoming Women's Candidates Final between Zhongyi Tan and Tingjie Lei, and that's going to take place in a few days time. So who are these players and how did they get there? Well, Zhongyi Tan, born 1991, former women's world chess champion 2017 to 2018. So that experience should obviously come in handy. Peak rating 2530 and also the current women's rapid champion as well. So she got through to the candidates final in quite thrilling style, surviving all manner of problems and difficulties against Katerina Lagno, and but then she defeated the very strong Goryachkina in fine style with a very good win in the final game of the match in a Cambridge Springs opening, which really suits her. And actually, that game is analysed elsewhere on this channel. So her opponent, Tingjie Lei, is a little bit younger, born 1997, with a peak rating of 2545, and she had a pretty strong march through to the final because she defeated both very strong Muzychuk sisters, well, I think Anna was in great form after defeating Humpy Kuneru. So yeah, I mean that was a really very impressive run from Lei. When you're talking about the scores between these players, at first sight it looks very lopsided in actual fact, because Tan is +10, -5 = 13, so significant plus score, and with White it's +7 = 9 -1, with just a slight minus score for Black. So at first sight looks really like Tan is the big favourite. However, I suppose the problem, you know, with especially looking at games in recent times, is that we're seeing a lot less classical and we're seeing a lot more blitz and rapid. So it's a little bit difficult sometimes to be 100% sure of those statistics. And actually, what you notice is that Tan really built up that big score in 2015 when she really scored a lot of wins against Lei. I mean, obviously she's a little bit older, so I think Lei was probably a bit more up and coming and Tan was a bit more established, but it was still a very impressive performance in 2015. But actually since 2019 it's equal, +3 -3 = 3. Although there's a lot of blitz in there and very little classical. Of course, I'm not 100% sure that these are all the games they've played against each other. There may be quite a few games played in China that I'm not actually seeing, but certainly in the databases, then this is what we see. So what I thought I'd do is just go through the openings that they play and try and guess a little bit to see what sort of openings we might get in the match. Let's start with Zhongyi Tan and Zhongyi Tan's White openings. So Zhongyi Tan is more or less a d4 c4 player. I mean, that's essentially what she is, and that's great because that's what I am too. Now, in terms of reserve openings, she's played c4 151 times, which is quite a bit in actual fact. So obviously not shy of that opening. And she's also played one knight f3 93 times. So it's pretty clear that mainly a d4 c4 player, but does have some variety, and that might just prove useful, as we'll discuss later. Also a reasonable amount of games with one e4, but well, that seemed to be mainly in a blitz match against one particular player. So I think maybe that was a bit of a special somehow. But one d4 is her main move. Now let's have a look at a few typical openings. So after knight f6, c4. And now a few typical choices. I mean, against the King's Indian, she is playing the Makoganov system, which is a real favourite amongst Chinese players, male and female. You're really seeing this a lot, and it's a very strong system, and particularly with playing h3 earlier and delaying the knight's development to f3. You can often play stuff like g4 and then knight e2 to g3, for example. So that's pretty strong. When you look against the Grunfeld, it's slightly surprising actually. This has been her main move against the Grunfeld, G3. Did used to play G3 against the King's Indian in the old days, and still playing this line against the Grunfeld. Slightly strange. I wouldn't be 100% sure that she would keep on playing this somehow, but has got fairly decent results with it. The main move that you've really got to look at with when you're playing 1d4 c4 is e6, and now knight c3 is by far the main move. There's been some knight f3, some g3 dotted around, but really knight c3 is the main move. And after bishop b4, then e3 has really been the main move. She also played knight f3, I think quite recently, but then followed it up with e3, so that's basically the same thing. So e3, the old Rubinstein system, and yeah, this is quite interesting. I mean, I'm going to be interested to see whether Tan plays this in the match. I mean, I have played this all my professional career, and even when I came back as an amateur, I kept on playing it as well. But you know, really, I don't believe in it anymore for white. I don't believe it gives any real advantage. And to be honest, against so many lines, I'm really struggling to make anything at all of it. But you know, it's the engines basically think that the Nimzo Indian is pretty good for black, and that pretty much any move is equal. And e3 comes for them to the top of the pile. So you know, maybe there's some more ideas to be found. One thing I did notice was that Tan does have a predilection for putting the knight on e2. So for example, after castles, bishop d3, d5, knight e2 has happened, although that didn't work out too well in a fairly recent game against the very strong Indian Grandmaster Sasha Kiran. You're seeing knight e2 quite a bit. Knight f3, the main line, also played quite a bit, and well, then various experiences. For example, this was one game, bishop a6, a very unusual move, but actually quite successful nowadays. And what was this game? This was white against a strong Moldovan grandmaster, I think, Kovalov, and she managed to win this one in the end. In a blitz tournament, this one. So yeah, I mean, really, basically, when we're talking d4 c4 against Nimzo against knight f6 e6, we're looking at Nimzo Indian with 4 e3. That's the main line. Of course, I'm focusing on the Nimzo Indian because that's what Lee most likely will play. If we're looking at d5, then c4 is overwhelmingly Tan's choice. She did play bishop f4 actually against Lei and won in a rapid game, but she was completely lost at one point. So the opening itself was not super successful. So after c4, what have we got? Well, we've had a number of lines. c6, knight f3, knight f6, knight c3 is really has been a pretty obligatory choice, although she has played the slow Slav a couple of times recently. But a lot of experience in this line. a6 c5, she's had 15 games in that. That's a lot of games. e6, bishop g5 has been played an awful lot, and had some very good games. Actually, a win against Lee, a very fine one against knight bd7, and also against Goryachkina in that fine last win of the candidates match. So wouldn't be something I'd recommend against her. Seems to have a good feeling for that. Against the Slav, played various things, but now seems to have settled on e3, which again is a line that I played as a professional. Quite good repertoire against the Slav, I think. Against the Queen's Gambit accepted. She's played e4 once in 2019, but not since. She's really fiddled around, I think you'd say, with the quieter sort of systems. So she played d takes c5 against Lei. That was a draw, little edge for white, but not too much. And she's also played bishop e2, which is a stockfish recommendation. Looks a little bit funny, but you're getting out of the way of b5, and the idea is if black takes, you take back with a knight, and then you put your bishop on f3 and pretend it's a Catalan. And against e6, strange enough, I mean, I was expecting, normally when people play d4, c4, you just play knight c3. And that's been the main move. If knight f6, then she plays this system, which you'd expect. That's why you normally play d4, c4. Don't commit the knight to f3. You can play this and then play some sort of Botvinnik system with e3, bishop d3, and the knight comes to e2. But quite a lot of choice here. If you go c6, then she's offering a Notenboom, which would be quite thrilling to see. I always thought this was pretty difficult for white to handle, pretty tricky for pretty nice for black, really. But it would be interesting to see what she's got in that line. The Tarrasch has had a number of games with this recently. The funny thing about it is that knight c6 was obligatory in the pre-computer age, and there she plays this line, which is very, very solid. I mean, you've got basically this gives white no hope of losing, and only white can win these types of positions. You often get this everything cleared in the center, and white's got the two bishops. Quite annoying if you want to play the Tarrasch for a win. Funnily enough, Tan has faced knight f6 quite a lot recently, which was just a total amateur's move in the good old days, but now in the computer age it's turning out to be the main move. Definitely have a look at some of the games of the young players like Pragananda, for example, in this line, making it look very good. And actually I've analysed it with my engines a lot as well. Looking really, really good. But actually, Tan's got a bit more variety than just knight c3, because she's also played knight f3, knight f6, knight c3 quite a bit, and after bishop e7, playing bishop f4. So, got a nice blend of systems against the various Queen's Gambit lines. Bishop f4, by the way, is quite recent, as you'd expect, really, considering she plays bishop g5 against the semi-Slav. Bishop g5 has also been was also her line before then, basically. So I mean, let's have a look. Anything else interesting to mention about all that? I mean, in general, really very solid, sensible opening repertoire. For example, against f5, doesn't get tempted by anything silly or strange, just plays the main lines against the Leningrad Dutch. After e6, doesn't get tempted by e4, but just plays c4. So really very, I think, quite restrained and quite balanced repertory, really. Now let's have a look. What do we have from Li as black? Let's have a look at her black repertory. What can we expect? Well, we're expecting d4 and c4. So let's see what Li does against that. d4. And now knight f6 is her main move, and after c4, then we've got e6. Now Grunfeld was her main line a few years back, but e6 has really been the mainstay the past few years. It happens to everyone. Everyone becomes solid in the end. So knight c3 is what interests us, and now bishop b4. Funnily enough, she played this line that Kramnik's also played: d5 takes, knight takes d5. Played it 4 times in 2018, 2019. I think also had it played against her as well, which might have triggered that. But really the Nimzo Indian has been the mainstay. And now, after e3, castles, bishop d3, d5, one line that she played that's quite interesting. You've got loads of choices here with black, but she actually played the Larsen variation, which is one of my favourites, and one of the lines that I prepared as black against this system. There's more. I mean, I play it as white. I've played it all my life virtually, so I've got a lot of choices with black. But this was always one that appealed to me somehow. Actually, in general, these lines where black plays bishop a5, doesn't commit early to c takes d4, I like very, very much for black. I mean, this could become a battleground potentially, but obviously I think the real theoretical onus is on Tan then to find something with white, because I think in a lot of different lines black is absolutely comfortable. So that could be quite interesting. Another move that Li has played as black is d5. We saw this Queen's Gambit accepted against Tan. Played this line a lot. So the Cambridge Springs, played a lot in 2016, 2017. Wouldn't recommend that against Tan. She seems to be pretty strong, and Lei's also lost a game in that as well. So yeah, I mean D5 repertory not looking as great, I think, as the Knight F6 repertory. And I would, my suggestion would be if Tan plays D4, then Knight F6 looks, pretty reasonable, really. The one interesting thing is, I was looking at Lei's repertory against the other moves. So, Knight F3, D5. I mean, I really got the idea that Lei was playing. Actually, it's very much what Jan Nepomniachtchi did against Magnus Carlsen. So you had the feeling that against when Magnus was trying to tweak his move orders and everything, Nepomniachtchi was always going back into this standard setup. D5, Knight F6, E6, Bishop E7. Very solid like that, and that gave Magnus in the match some chances to do some interesting stuff with B3 and all of that. And I do wonder whether that's one thing that you might exploit in a couple of white games. I also noticed that after C4, Lei had played an awful lot of different choices over the years. So we've had E5, Knight C3, Bishop B4. This was the latest choice in 2022. A line I've played an awful lot. It's a little bit dodgy, I think, although quite interesting. Knight F6 also played in 2021, and this is a line that if I remember right, that Tan has played as white. So that could be quite interesting. But also played one E6, looking to head back to some sort of Queen's Gambit declined, one C6 in 2017, and even one C5 in 2019. And actually, I think this was one of the games that Lei lost to Tan in this position as well. I'm not sure. I mean, normally I always think that when people swap a lot against one C4, it's that they're not 100% comfortable against it. And again, I think that one Knight F3. If you're always going to play the same structure, it gives your opponent some chances maybe to discover some interesting move orders to try and trick you somehow. So I definitely would, if I was preparing with white against Lei, I'd definitely and I was a 1d4 c4 player, I'd definitely try and have a Knight F3 and a C4 in a couple of games. To be honest, I might even look to play one C4 in the first game, because I suspect that the reply will tell you a lot about the opening that Lei's got prepared against 1d4. I think if 1e6, then you can be pretty sure that that some sort of Queen's Gambit declined is prepared. Obviously, if 1c6, then you're going to be facing a Slav. If it's 1e5 or 1c5, then you most likely be facing something, I think, like one Knight F6. Might be interesting, to try out an idea like that, and also try and pick up some intelligence on what openings Lei is going to play against 1d4. But of course, again for Tan, I think if you're, if this is your main line, Knight c3, Bishop b4, e3, then you've really got to do some serious theoretical work to try and get something interesting, promising. I think in general, I always felt that the problem where I got to is I felt against most lines I had something, fresh at least, but there were some theoretical lines where I'd tried all my fresh stuff and I just really didn't have very much really to offer, so I think it needs some big preparation there to make this work. So I'll be intrigued whether Tan does this, or whether she goes for maybe a different line of the Nimzo-Indian. Okay, so that's how I see the struggle unfolding, and also my advice for Tan as white. Let's have a look now at what Tingjie Lei plays as white. Now, she is really a 1e4, 1d4 player. Played a bit of c4, Knight f3 at times, but I think really, I'd say now mainly a 1e4 player who also plays, knows a lot about 1d4 as well. So after 1e4, what have we got? Well, I mean, obviously I'm going to concentrate on Tan's main openings. Really mainline person. Now she played c3 at the Alapin in 2 games in 2022. But in general, she's a mainline Sicilian player. So takes, knight c3 and a6. The strange thing is that she's actually played with white against a very limited number of systems in the database. For example, she's never played against a dragon before. And against a6, she's played h3 once, but the main move is really bishop e3. And actually, she had a lot of games against Hao Yifan in this line and did pretty well, really. All blitz games, but yeah, did pretty well in those. So really, a mainline Sicilian type of lady. Now against 1e5, then knight f3, knight c6, and now I think bishop c4 has become her main move. Before, bishop b5 was her main move, and she was meeting the Berlin with d3 mainly. But bishop c4 has become quite important, and yeah, I mean she had a number of games like this in the Charity Cup, which was a rapid event, chess24.com, I think. And yeah, she had this sharp line, the 2 knights, a number of times against 2 very strong players, Li Kuang and Hari Krishna from India. She lost both, tough struggles. But yeah, I mean that would be quite interesting because well, I noticed that Tan is playing 3 knight f6 and allowing this. So yeah, might be interesting. I think she's had a game against Tan where she played d3. But yeah, this would be a nice little thing to try out. Otherwise, if we're looking at the d4 repertory, just give a few things. Well, I mean, Advance Caracan was one main opening, and actually in 2021 she was playing this move knight d2 quite a bit, followed by knight b3, which is quite an interesting little wrinkle there. In 2022, she actually played the move knight f3, d5, d3. Which has got pretty popular, just going for the ending like that, claiming a slight edge. I believe it not at all, to be honest, but yeah, a lot of strong players have been playing like this, so yeah, why not? And then what else have we got? Well, let's have a look at the French, and they're mostly knight c3. She threw in a cheeky e takes d5 one time, playing for a win, that one, but yeah, knight c3, knight f6. Well, bishop b4, just main lines. I haven't seen... yeah, black played bishop a5, not the main line bishop takes c3, although bishop a5 is, I think it's the favoured engine move, or, when I last did a huge survey of Stockfish and Komodo and Leela's openings, and Koivisto I did as well, then, yeah, bishop a5 was a favourite move in actual fact. Against knight f6, which is the main move nowadays, actually bishop g5 played in 2021, which is quite interesting. Not so popular nowadays, and also played yeah, some of the main line, this one here. And yeah, after a6 we got knight e2 in one game in 2021. So you can see that's a pretty mainline repertoire really with 1e4. So yeah, that's pretty nice really. 1d4 again, pretty sharp really. d5 c4 against the Queen's Gambit accepted. Before 2021 she always played the sharpest line e4, although she's switched to a quieter line now. Again, very solid line b3, very similar to what Tan plays with bishop e2 actually. So those sort of things could transpose. And then yeah, I mean one of the important things here, maybe the most important thing to point out, is that after knight f6, always playing c4. If e6, then she is playing g3 mostly, or knight f3 followed by g3. So she's really a Catalan player. And well, I'm mentioning this for a reason. I'm definitely expecting Catalans to be played in this match. So okay, so that's Li as white. Essentially, very well prepared player, quite sharp lines, pretty much yeah, in your face with stuff, I'd say. So nice aggressive style there. Looking at what Tan plays as black. So against e4, we've got a mixture of the very, very nice and the not so exciting. So d6 actually was really Tan's mainstay about 5 or 6 years ago. Loads of games in the database. It's still her most played opening, but not very much since 2019. I mean, the one advantage of this move is that if you desperately need to play for a win, then you've always got a choice there. Now, I'll maybe show you the one that I like the most, c5. So a lot of Najdorfs here. By the way, against c3, which we might see, then e6 was what she played in 2023. No games of Lei against that, and also knight f6 also played. Also no games of Lei against that. But after knight f3, d6. The interesting thing about Tan, the players are, a lot of players play, similar sort of openings, just Najdorfs are very common and all of that. But, it's always interesting to see the character pieces. And the interesting about Tan is that she's a real Scheveningen fan. So she's played the Scheveningen in 2023, which is really unusual. Nowadays, very few players do this anymore. Well, after d6, d4 takes, knight c3. A6, bishop e3, she's playing e6, which is pretty unusual. In actual fact, in all these systems, everyone's actually playing e5 an awful lot. But like against h3, she's playing e6, and against bishop e2, she's playing e6 as well. So really, this Scheveningen structure is really something she likes. And what's really interesting as well is that in 2023, she also tried a dragon. Wow, look at that. Has she been influenced by Anish Giri's recent course, which is fabulous, by the way, I have to say. Maybe, who knows, but that would be thrilling, wouldn't it? Dragon, a match with a dragon. We haven't seen that since, I don't know, Karpov-Korchnoi or something. It's, Gary played the dragon twice against Vishy-Anand, but that was just to confuse and upset, but that would be really, really cool. However, there is a slight fly in the ointment because actually Zhongyi Tan also plays both the Petrov, 1e5 and the Petrov. That's a slightly unusual one. I'm not sure about this one because it was a lot in 2022 and it was maybe just for a special Blitz tournament, and she also played 1e4 against the same opponent lots of times, so maybe this was just an experimental phase. But definitely the Berlin is definitely the main line. So I think if 1e4 happens, we're most likely going to see a Berlin there. Against bishop c4, knight f6, it's consistently the most recent choice. So knight g5 would be a great deal of fun, I have to say. That might be I don't know. I mean, I think you could if you do some good work on it as white, you could maybe just punt it once somehow and test the waters. But I fear rather that 1e4, e5, and then looking for a Berlin, that's going to be the main thing. Against 1d4, then one knight f6 is Tan's main idea. c4 and now e6. She did play g6 in 2023, but that was once, and before then she hadn't played it before 2011 when she was a King's Indian player. So I don't think it's going to happen. I think again for a match this is going to happen, and then we're going to get some sort of Catalan. The interesting thing is that I don't feel that Tan is particularly settled in a black systems against Catalan. Played all sorts of stuff. Bishop g2, bishop b4 check. I've played that a lot as black. Very solid repertoire. But also played some moves like this: d takes c4 and knight c6. These sort of lines. And I think also played some of the main line as well. I'm pretty sure I'm right. It's not in my list here. I think it's through another move order, but I'm pretty sure she's also played this solid main line as well. So yeah, I think we're definitely going to get some Catalans there. The interesting thing to me actually is whether what I noticed was against knight f3, then we also saw quite a few Bogos with bishop b4 check. That might be interesting. Strangely enough, not very much against g3, but it seems just as good against that to me. So Bogo-Indian would be a very interesting, departure from all those Catalans and everything. And well, if your opponent plays g3, I mean, I do always feel that c5. If you're going to go for the modern Benoni, it might as well be against this. But no, there's no evidence of Li ever having looked at the modern Benoni, so I don't think we're going to see this. Against knight c3, we're getting Nimzo-Indians mainly. A little bit of d5. This line was played quite a lot actually. c6, e3, bishop f5, offering this ending, which Tan played a number of times in when was it? 2019? Am I right on that? 2022. So even more recently. Possible, but mainly after knight c3, we're heading for a Nimzo there. A line that she knows quite well from the white side as well. But I don't think we're going to get any of that. I think we're going to be seeing Catalans here, maybe a Bogo-Indian as well. Yeah, I mean, where would I try and beat Tan if I was white against her? Yeah, not so easy somehow. Again, I would be tempted whenever players play the Nimzo-Indian as black. I would be tempted to start off to punt off with a 1c4 or a 1 knight f3, but I don't think that's really how Li plays. I think that's more something that Tan can do better. So yeah, I think we're simply going to have to go for 1e4, 1d4. And try and find some stuff in the lines. I think playing the Catalan is a good choice. I think that's going to be a good one. It would be quite natural to start off with the Catalan, I think, and then with 1e4. Well, maybe have a look at what you can find. Be interesting to see whether Tan is going to play the Petrov or whether they're going to play something with knight c6. And then actually against Tan, Li has played bishop c4, d4, and bishop b5. Ooh, bishop b5. So you've got plenty of choice there. Italian game seems quite promising. You could try a knight g5, could try a d3, and see how that goes. In general, I think Li's had some problems really winning with white against Tan. So it's going to be interesting to see how she does that. I think she's got a bit less variety in general than Tan on the d4 side. But of course, the big advantage of being able to play 1e4 and 1d4. So So in summary, what do I think? What do I think about the match? Well. I have the feeling that that Tan is just a tiny bit of an awkward opponent for Li. I think she hasn't over the years. I don't think from the games I've seen anyway. I think Tan has found it easier to win games than Li. But on the other hand, a lot of the recent games have been blitz, and since for the past 3 years the scores have been about even. So maybe that the psychological advantage that was built up in 2015 is sort of disappearing now. Openings are going to be tough, I think. Well, for any match where players have a lot of time to prepare, openings are really, really tough. I would say that Tan should be making use of her variety with c4, knight f3. Maybe use those moves in the first few white games just to understand better what Li's going to play as black, and then maybe try and in a third game as white, for example, try and get the 1d4 in. And then, I think that, I would say that Li will stick with a Nimzo-Indian against 1d4. That'd be interesting, I would say, and then interesting to see what she comes up with as black against 1c4 or 1 knight f3. And then with white, I think that Li has just got to pound with 1e4, 1d4. And just switch between both, and just try and keep on setting problems with just going to need to find some new wrinkles in lines, but not going to be easy because Tan really has a good choice of solid lines against 1e4, the Petrov, or in principle the dreaded Berlin. So that's quite a decent way of playing, and against 1d4. Then expecting a Nimzo, but I think to be honest, if I'm feeling positive about what could you do as white, I'd say that Catalans give probably a better chance of getting a good advantage rather than 1e4 against a 1e5 and a Berlin. But yeah, you know, we'll see. We'll see how that goes. I think in general that Tan is maybe a slight favourite in this match. But yeah, of course, you know, Li is a bit younger, so yeah, that can always play a role in terms of stamina. You know, dealing with stress. So looking forward very much to this match. Do stay tuned to this channel because, of course, we'll be analysing some of the games as they happen, just to see who becomes the challenger for the Women's World Championship, which I think is being held later this year. There we are. If you enjoyed this video, why not like the video, subscribe to the channel, take a look at my new book, The Silicon Road to Chess Improvement. Not very many human games there, but lots of engine games and lots of big advice about how to work with engines. And otherwise, you know, thanks very much for watching and hope to see you in the next few videos. Thanks for watching.